Hello again from the vision stage here at GreenTech. I'm particularly excited. I'm excited about all of our discussions, but I'm particularly excited to hear about this case study, we could almost call it, about transforming a region from being, in the fossil age, we could say, to the modern age. So it's about renewable energy transition and how that relates as well to horticulture. And I'm delighted to be joined here on the desk with Thomas Zoellner from the Farm Tech Society. Thomas, warm greetings to you. Damion has made it from Certhon, Damion Schwarzkachel. And we have as well, next to his side, Georg Czerny from BayWa, a developer of green infrastructure from Germany, of course. And also from Germany, Nico Dormurath from the Fraunhofer Institute, so applied research. So gentlemen, very warm greetings here to GreenTech. And we're going to get right stuck into this case study. I'd like, if you would, Thomas, for you to just kind of paint the picture and introduce what we're going to be talking about a little bit, because this is quite important, not only for this region, but for the whole of Europe and arguably for the whole of the world.
Indeed. Thank you. Thanks, Mariska and team, for this absolutely amazing opportunity to actually reconvene here. When we pull back, of course, right now agriculture is labeled the biggest greenhouse emitter, as the pandemic has knocked off the energy sector from that pedestal. We need to really recognize that there are some fundamentals which are much more conceptual than what we actually normally do in agriculture. Agriculture, by definition, is a kind of like a local, very small-scale, family-oriented business. And so far, the main energy driver has been fossil fuel to run this thing. So in a sense, the achievement of a decarbonization in agriculture needs to be looked on from an almost radical point of view. You need to be able to kind of reassign kind of a whole structure, or an infrastructure, as we call it, to really achieve that decarbonization target. Now, controlled environment agriculture, as we recognize and promote, has a great advantage in this journey to decarbonization, simply because it is a system which can be highly efficient.
We were talking just a moment ago in the session here before about examples from around the world. But one example that was brought was about economic regeneration, actually in the Kentucky area with App Harvest. And they were talking about how, what they're doing, relatively independent to the outside world with a CEA solution, can also help the economic development in that particular region. And that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit here as well. So what's happening in the Lausitz?
The Lausitz, yeah, this is a very curious region. Some call it West Poland, some call it, southeastern Germany. But it's a very major producer of energy, fossil energy. It's based on brown coal, which is dug up on open pit mining. And that has been definitely phased out by the German government, 2018. And so that region is really slated to undergo a very radical transition. And in a sense where you have poor soils, or we have climate issues, or an open pit mining field, you ask yourself, how are you going to regenerate that? Naturalization is, of course, renaturalization is one way to do it, but another more interesting way would be to really use a new economic model to overcome this kind of transition and generate not only jobs, but careers, long-term careers, and also generate sustainability and also food security, and really look at CEA, a cluster of CEA, as we defined it, 1,000 hectares, can approximately generate 10,000 jobs. And these are very interesting jobs, from engineering degrees down to IoT people, marketing people, etc. So these are really a very recognizable factor for politicians to see this as a viable transition into a decarbonized energy equation.
Yep, and we're talking about, I think with the transition of the energy, we're talking about 40,000 different fairly skilled professionals who are looking for new opportunities, and this is perhaps one of them.
Yep.
So let's just talk a little bit more about this infrastructure, if we can, please, Georg. from a BayWa perspective, you obviously know the region well, geographically located not that far from it. But tell us a little bit more about what's happening there, and also from an infrastructure perspective and what BayWa is talking about.
Yeah, thank you very much, first of all, for having me. Such a great event, and nice to be back at events as well. And regarding the project in Germany, first of all, what I really like about it is that it's market driven. It's not a subsidy game where politicians decide to revitalize an area and put a lot of money into it and it doesn't work. But actually it's market driven. The German market is heavily undersupplied when it comes to German produce. At the same time, the German consumer favors German produce and is paying a premium for it right now. And that price premium shows me that there's a lack of supply.
And it's quite a big price premium.
It's up to 40% in certain market windows on tomatoes.
Yeah.
And tomatoes, for example, if we stay with this example, less than even though the area has doubled in the last couple of years, still less than 10% is being produced in Germany. So that's what I like about this initiative. And I think we're all in agreement that the cornerstone of such a project needs to be sustainability. We cannot develop such a kind of visionary, large-scale project based on fossil fuels. So with it comes at the heart of such a project, in our opinion, is an energy park, a renewable energy park. And I don't think there will be one source of energy here. It will be more a mix, a combination between solar, geothermal, if the location allows, wind, biomass, heat pumps, and so on. In order to sustain such a large scale kind of greenhouse park, the initial investment for these renewable energy asset infrastructure is quite high. So a standalone project will never invest in a geothermal asset. So this is why I really believe in clustering, because it allows to spread the costs of this green infrastructure among the operators.
And get those operators to work together as well, synergetically.
Absolutely.
So we were talking in the rehearsal a little bit about grid stability. Of course, having a lot more renewables and the volatility that comes along with that is a challenge, but having CEA installed can also help maybe with the grid stability, I understand.
Absolutely, it's a great buffer, and as you say, working with these synergies on the energy side, but also on the operational side, on the procurement side, it will have a tremendous impact on the German cost price, which is still far away from the Dutch cost price, which is the non plus ultra cost price, of course. But I think this will allow us to come closer to it and to bridge this gap in the market. Yeah. Yeah.
Nico, what role is the Fraunhofer Institute playing here in terms of your applied research? And you're specialized in this area, so what are you doing?
Actually, Georg already built a bridge for me, because that's exactly where we are taking the ball. When it comes to the marriage of CEA and renewable energy, there's a lot of things to consider. There's a lot of technology that should be in between the two industries, and that's exactly where Fraunhofer stands for. Because energy transition, energy conversion, storage, all kind of bringing the renewable energy that is volatile into different forms, into storage forms, into new fuels. That's something that Fraunhofer is specialized in. For example, we are working for more than 20 years with all kinds of fuel cells and batteries. We don't know only how to build batteries and fuel cells, we also know how to recycle them. So to make the whole story round again, it's circularity from A to Z. And that's exactly what we are looking for. And the most interesting part for me, because I'm coming from the horticultural side of things, is that we do something that is different than in other clusters. Usually horticultural clusters are traditionally grown networks and environments, and we are trying to really implement a cluster from scratch, but in a very short period of time. And that's the sportive aspect of it.
So before, Damion, we come to you and talk about how we can do this as well with CEA, let's just go back to Thomas and just summarize quickly. So we're taking a region, traditionally very fossil fuel based, that has gone. Something else is coming in place for sure, I think, which is renewable energy. There's already quite a lot installed there, and maybe even more diverse renewable energy. And basically providing an opportunity for more autonomous food production in that region, utilizing the opportunities which are given.
Correct. I mean, the interesting part is, as I was alluding earlier, is that also by clustering, let's say, family businesses in horticulture, you create a synergy, which then allows also to develop not only a kind of an energy base or an energy trading platform, but also become a marketing platform. And that it creates an identity for the region in itself, which is quite interesting from a consumer point of view, as well as the creation of actual jobs, or the transition of the brown to the green jobs can actually be easily achieved with a combination of that. Of course, the challenge is that there aren't that many clusters today. I mean, there's Westland in the Netherlands, which is the belly button of horticulture innovation, and it's quite beautiful, but it's organically grown over a long period of time. It may have also some negative parts about it, but the planning of a new cluster is, of course, a new challenge in itself. But I think we're reaching a stage where a lot of the supply companies, a lot of the operators, but also the regulators are starting to pay attention. I mean, it's really the arguments are all on the table. We have literally no competition, in my view, in a region like Lausitz. And if that really is something we can translate into an actual successful model, then there's many regions in the world who have similar issues, whether it's too dry, too cold, or they have brown coal open pit mining, which needs to go.
From a Certhon perspective, this must be music to your ears. You basically take everything you do in Bestland, copy paste, put it in there, finished, right?
Well, I agree. Well, thank you for having us here. But I agree, it's music in our ears. But it's not so easy, Andrew, to just copycat. That would be, I'd say, a mistake to do exactly the same, because the starting point is different. So the starting point is green infrastructure, economic development, and also developing a different food chain. And that's where we, as Certhon, tap in with our technology solutions to basically utilize the resources that are available in the most efficient way and develop and make technology decisions from there on that fit with the market demand on the produce, on the supply terms, on the prices that people can pay or the market is willing to pay for the trading for it. So I think we can fit in this picture very well and make the puzzle together, but we don't do that alone. So we do that together with these people, but also with the politicians, with the markets and the end consumer in the end. So.
Yeah. No, fantastic to hear, and it must be quite encouraging as well that it's at least a neighboring country for you, and there's a certain affinity as well, and just helping in that situation, not necessarily having to do it in a completely different part of the world. Also, as a European, I think a certain amount of pride that you can help with a solution like this.
Absolutely. So Certhon works globally, so we see the development of more localized food production around the world. Each region has its own context and challenges they have to overcome. But basically, everybody wants healthy food. They want to have it more close by produced and be less reliable on fossil fuels. And to do that with your neighboring country, with markets we know, with also produce which fits with the market, I think that's maybe overexerted, but it's an easy step. And maybe we should have then done that already in the past to start working more close by instead of far away.
Yeah. But there are still many challenges involved with that, and a project of this scale, I can only imagine the bureaucracy that must be behind it, but we can perhaps leave that to the side. But you also mentioned already, Georg, that it takes a tremendous amount of investment as well, and you can't really just say, okay, we're going to put up a few greenhouses here. It's got to be part of a bigger picture. And I think one thing which has become clear during some of our conversations already here is that getting the investment community enthusiastic about it is not necessarily the difficult part, but getting them to engage and know where to engage and giving them a focal point with documentation, information, transparency, it's not always so easy, is it?
No, 100%. I mean, you said rightly we're neighbors, but still, the further you move away from Westland, the higher the risk for any investor to invest in any CEA project, because there are just so many unknowns. And I know this quite well. We have a project in the Middle East, so which we operate 10 hectares there. We have 30 hectares which we operate in New Zealand. And once you're not embedded into a cluster like you're in the Netherlands of research facilities, consultants, technology providers, it becomes more and more difficult because we cannot copy and paste. We cannot build a Dutch greenhouse in Germany and expect it to work. And especially we cannot build a Dutch greenhouse in the desert and expect it to work. So we have to make it understandable. We have to agree on KPIs that investors understand as well. And I think you're right, capital is not really a limiting factor, but still in Germany, if we stay with this case study, as you said, we do not have Rabobank, who finance, I don't know, around 90% of the projects here, and who are already reluctant to finance any project which is in Belgium, you know. It's already for them an unknown, you know, and then if Tom mentioned 1,000 hectares. That obviously has a huge capex that comes with it, and here we need to make it understandable for the investment community, and we need to de-risk it for the investment community. And here again, clusters are the answer, because a standalone project is hard to ensure. A standalone project has its very high capex, because you know they need to develop infrastructure from the ground. You know, it's not there. So by clustering it, I think the investor really has less risk. And but it's obviously a harder process to get there, because it's quite big to develop a project of such a scale.
So,
May I add
yeah,
something
absolutely,
to,
Damion.
because I feel that there are already a lot of good examples around the world, and not everything maybe had the most smoothest start, but the de-risking is also in good partnerships and starting with a well-planned and same goals. Then I think there can be good achievements, and worldwide there's also good examples of it. I think the Westland area is an example, maybe grew different starting points, but there's a blueprint of how business, universities, research, and also politics can cooperate to organize a new ecosystem. I think as a blueprint, the example is there. We just 100%. Need to do it maybe a little bit differently in a different location.
Thomas, if we look from a Moody's perspective, you know, an investment potentially in this region of this topic must be relatively low risk. That's not necessarily the issue, I would have thought at least, compared to doing it in somewhere which is a little less transparent, let's put it this way. But putting all the ducks in a row and getting all the partners together in one place, that's something that perhaps as Europeans we're not always traditionally quite as good at, because things have grown over time and everybody has their little niches and their roles. So how do you possibly go about bringing so many different partners together, and also you know, from the policy making side of things, the business entrepreneurial side of things, the investment finance side of things, the science and the research side of things, how do you possibly do that?
Yeah, that's obviously something which emerges when you are maturing into such a scale. And you know, again, agriculture is a bit odd because it is old-fashioned and it also uses different approaches to, let's say, the financing part of things. However, you know, today there's also an entrepreneurial spirit still very valid and is also very needed, because everybody would like to know where they stand in their efforts, right? So your cost unit economics is going to be most important to find out and compare it. And there we see that this is obviously a very big factor to make this more visible and understandable and de-risk the inherent food production risks, which are generally perceived as completely uninvestable. It's not a real asset class anywhere. But with controlled environment agriculture, we do have actually quite a lot of advantages to really showcase this. We're highly digitized environments. We also use circular methods, etc. So we kind of really advance. And now the next step is logically that there is an umbrella organization like Farm Tech Society in collaboration with academia, in collaboration with other organizations to try to benchmark this as a first step. And with the benchmarking, you then will get obviously closer to a very clearer picture and the size of the market. That's always important to understand. It's kind of still a mystery today that nobody really has good data on what we do. Huh? That needs to be solved, and that needs to be solved rather fast. And we're really confident that with an industry association which has an independence and represent not just the technology providers but all the stakeholders, we will be able to at least create a doable roadmap and then look at the results and help really in that process of doing a model on these cluster ideas as a blueprint for the entire industry.
And at what stage is the project right now? It's basically in the initial idea stage?
No. We actually have already reached out to a number of financial institutions, banks, insurance companies, but also private equity investors, and have conducted a number of very insightful workshops. We are developing a budget around this initiative, and we are looking into the next step of engaging with the operators to really define also what we would like to actually benchmark here and how will we do that. I mean, the governance will be super critical. We need to be very above board. I mean, there's not a whiff of commercial interest here. We really do this for all the participants involved and ensure a very watertight management of these data points, and then obviously get a lot of input from as many stakeholders as possible. We want to be holistic. It doesn't help to be fragmented. It doesn't help if you just do a small section, because you always end up with proxies in your calculations, and that is really the problem where we are. Yeah. But I'm confident we will by the end of this year have a sort of a doable roadmap with a budget.
Something which is bankable.
Exactly.
Good. And you're in initial conversations already with the political community, with local politicians, and
yes.
Even national.
Yeah, I mean, there's also an EU umbrella. Of course, it's a part of the Green Deal idea. Fits perfectly. But also the federal government in Germany is obviously very interested to make that transition a very economic transition. And then the regional, local stakeholder communes, the communities and is already engaged. Also on the parliament side of things here in the EU, there are conversations. There's awareness to be really disseminated further, but we're in a good stage. Yeah.
Nico, this must be also a kind of a dream project almost for you guys to be involved with from the Fraunhofer Institute, because you really have the opportunity to make those links that you were talking about and the bridge that Georg provided for us. So is this the only project you kind of talk about in your planning meetings then at Fraunhofer at the moment?
I would love to say that it is the only project that we are talking about, but it's not, obviously. But yes, we are investing a lot of resources into the idea, and every time we talk to stakeholders or people on the streets, the mining company, politicians, but also producers of vegetables, we always get a super good feedback, and they are really keen to join the initiative, which I personally did not expect from the beginning, because I'm more pessimistic kind of a guy, but I'm always surprised by the positive reactions in the industry, from the political side of things, but also from the research and academia society. So actually everybody is opening doors. Good. Which is excellent.
Good to hear. Talking about people leaving doors and opening doors, let's go to the German elections, and not because it's not only because it's very current, but would it have any effect, do you think, Georg, on projects like this, independent of the outcome, or maybe dependent on the outcome, I'm not sure.
Yeah, the outcome is a bit up in the air right now, I would say. But definitely it has an impact. But I think one thing we we can agree upon right now is no matter which coalition we're going to see at the end, the Green Party will have a strong say, and they won't be in the opposition anymore, but actually in government. I regard this, even though some of the ideas, especially around agriculture, are a bit unpractical and not really proven by reality. But I regard it for this project, or for controlled environment agriculture at large in Germany and also other parts of the European Union. I regard this as a good thing, because I think they are really going to push this change through. You know, they're not only going to talk about it, they now have a commitment to their voters to make the food supply chains, first of all, more resilient. What we see in the UK right now is quite worrisome.
Oh, yeah.
There's a food crisis in Europe right now, energy-driven as well, energy-driven. And I think the consumer also starts to make the connection between fossil fuels and food, which they have, if it's on the numbers 6 o'clock news.
It's the first time I've heard that there's not enough carbon dioxide for a long time.
Yeah. That's very counterintuitive, I would say, to what the consumer usually hears and sees. So I think the Green Party has to become realistic about this, and they will support any project which helps the decarbonization goals of Germany, which help to make food supply chains more resilient, more local, and more sustainable at large. So
but even the other parties, I think, not only the Greens are really, very stuck on this agenda. It was in all the manifestos. So probably independent to the outcome, even if the Greens were not in government, it would still be a go.
Absolutely. I mean, the zeitgeist points in that direction. No matter which coalition we are going to have, it's a trend which will happen. And I think it's also not only for the Dutch greenhouse construction companies a positive thing, but also for Dutch growers, for operators. I mean, as a Dutch grower going into Germany now and trying to get a project off the ground by yourself is quite challenging. But if it's, I think this can really help also the Dutch growers to set foot in Germany.
Perfect question for Damion.
I agree. It goes together. So the technology is there to fit with the green infrastructure available. I think the solution is climate-proof. So whatever climate changes might affect the agriculture in Germany or in Europe, we have technology to overcome that, and at least to protect a part of the food chain and produce meat in Europe. And if the technology can land in good resource environment and context in Germany or in other countries, then the operators will also come and cross the border. That's at least the Dutch entrepreneurs, I'm sure they're open for that, because they traveled the world for a long time.
Yeah, fantastic.
Maybe if I if I may add to that, we're speaking only about Germany, which obviously is the biggest consumer market.
I was just coming as well to that. No, absolutely.
But I think the trend that the production, which is now very much concentrated in one or two countries of origin, will decentralize over the whole of Europe. It's not just a German thing. I think it's really the Dutch will export less fresh produce, but more technology over the next decade. I think that's, in a nutshell, maybe.
It's going to be local for local anyhow.
Yeah.
So
that's the perfect bridge as well to Thomas to talk about. You're active in Brussels as well, of course. So is this a kind of a lighthouse project as well, which people are talking about there? And what's the sentiment and the mood?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned very early on, people in Brussels are sensitive to several topics. One is the decarbonization aspect, obviously, and that's a big mystery for them, how to solve that. But then really even bigger is, the jobs, careers. And, we have a real opportunity here also because Europe still is a really knowledge leader in this technology and in this knowledge of growing plant products and whatnot. And all the new technologies with insects and alternative protein is actually also coming out of here. And from a holistic point of view, this is actually almost a logic way of creating, let's say, a conversation in the context of policymaking. And the visibility is, of course, what we need, what I need to do for Farm Tech Society and on behalf of my members, that they come and see a greenhouse from inside, because most of them have never seen one. Sad to say, but it's not that far to go see it.
I'm sure Certhon can open a few doors there.
They're absolutely welcome, and also maybe to say the Greenhouse 2.0, that's our indoor farm technologies. So then we're not dependent on any climate situation anymore. Robotic developments, sensor, autonomous growing. There's so much technologies going in there, creating new jobs, new tech jobs, and we think that's also setting a future for at least the Netherlands, but also for the European Union as a whole to to take our position in the world. So.
Gentlemen, those are perfect closing words. I thank you very much for your contributions. I'm going to be watching this very closely, this project. Very enthusiastic to hear from you today. Big round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks.
Yeah, fantastic. Where can people who are here now especially, where can they learn a little bit more from you?
Well, we are, thanks to the pandemic, very visible online, and most of our members too. I mean, ideally you go and look up under the European Transparency Register. We're listed there. Farm Tech Society is at the moment the only organization really being registered on the controlled environment agriculture. And then our websites and our personal emails can always be addressed for questions.
Good. All right, so that's an offer to everyone here. Thank you so much for being with us in person and listening in to what we're doing here. And we're going to be carrying on in a few minutes with the next topic, and it's all about hydroponics.
Wow.
Should be exciting. Okay, we'll see you in a moment. Thank you.
Thank you.